The silence of space was shattered when the Zorathian fleet emerged from the depths of the galaxy, their advanced ships cutting through the void like knives through the night. The Zorathians, a species known for their brutal conquests across the stars, had set their sights on Earth. They believed the planet and its people were nothing more than a primitive curiosity, a race too backward to pose any real threat. To them, Earth was a planet waiting to be conquered, its technology insignificant, and its people weak. The Zorathians' arrogance knew no bounds. Their fleet was armed with some of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, capable of obliterating entire cities with a single shot. Their eye-controlled warships were virtually unstoppable, a terrifying force of destruction. The humans of Earth, with their outdated technology, stood no chance in the face of such overwhelming might. The Zorathians had decided to invade, to humiliate the humans, and to show them just how powerless they truly were. Back on Earth, at the heart of the military command center, Commander Bonner stood, his eyes fixed on the screens in front of him. The room was filled with tension, the air thick with the weight of impending disaster. The news was worse than he had feared. The Zorathian fleet was headed straight for Earth, and their ships were already in orbit, blocking out the stars. His heart raced, but his face remained calm, a mask of stoic resolve. "Commander, we've received confirmation." An officer spoke, breaking the silence. "The Zorathian fleet is en route. They've crossed the outer rim and will be in Earth's atmosphere in less than an hour." Bonner's mind raced. He knew the odds. The humans had nothing that could stand up to the Zorathian firepower. No missiles, no shields, not even their most advanced technology could match the AI-driven warships of their alien invaders. But he was a soldier, and soldiers didn't back down. They fought, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. "Prepare the teams. We'll go with what we have," Bonner ordered, his voice unwavering. He didn't show fear. Fear was a luxury they couldn't afford. "We might not win, but we'll make them pay for every inch of Earth they try to take." As Bonner walked down the narrow hallways of the command center, he knew the gravity of the situation. The team members, many of whom had been his friends for years, were already gearing up, their faces set in determination. Some were excited, others terrified, but none of them showed weakness. They were human, and that alone gave them something the Zorathians would never understand: heart. "Bonner, we don't stand a chance against them," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice strained. "Their ships, they're not just advanced, they're invincible." Bonner paused, looking Harris in the eye. "Maybe they're invincible," he said, his voice cold and steady. "But we're going to give them a fight they'll never forget." The Zorathians, for all their technology and power, had underestimated one thing: the human spirit. Humans were not known for their advanced weaponry or superior intellect when compared to alien species, but they were survivors. They had faced extinction countless times throughout their history and had always found a way to fight back. As the team readied themselves for what could be their last battle, Bonner could feel the weight of their fear, but he also felt something else, something stronger. It was the same feeling he had experienced during every battle, every life or death situation he had faced: determination. "We'll fight with everything we have," Bonner said, his voice rising. "We fight because we have to. We fight because we're human. And that's what makes us stronger than anything they have." The soldiers nodded, their resolve hardening. They didn't have the best technology. They didn't have the best ships or the best weapons. But they had each other, and they had something the Zorathians couldn't comprehend: hope. But as the humans prepared, the Zorathian AI system was already working. The fleet's advanced technology was designed to adapt to every situation, to predict and counter human moves before they even happened. The Zorathians had long since mastered the art of war, and their AI had made them virtually invulnerable. In the heart of the alien fleet, the Zorathian commander sat in his chair, looking down at Earth. His eyes gleamed with contempt as he watched the human soldiers scramble below. They were nothing. They were weak. But he had learned long ago never to underestimate a species completely. Even now, as he prepared to give the order for the invasion to begin, he was confident it would be swift and easy. "Deploy the ground forces," he commanded coldly. "Let's show them what happens when they dare to defy the Zorathian Empire." As the Zorathian forces descended toward Earth, Commander Bonner and his team were already in position. They had been briefed on the enemy's tactics, their movements monitored, but nothing could prepare them for what was about to come. The invasion had begun. The first wave of Zorathian ships broke through the atmosphere, sending shockwaves across the globe. The air shook as the ground forces were deployed, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Earth's skies darkened as the alien ships filled the horizon, their weapons powered up and ready to strike. "Stay focused, stay calm," Bonner barked as his team moved into position. "We're going to use the cloaking devices. We'll hide until we know their movements. We need to get close enough to strike before they know what hit them." But the Zorathians were already one step ahead. Their AI system had already predicted the humans' use of cloaking technology. Even as the humans activated their devices and tried to hide, the Zorathian fleet's sensors locked onto their positions. The human efforts were futile. The Zorathians knew exactly where they were. A sudden blast erupted from the sky, and Bonner's team was thrown to the ground by the shockwave. The Zorathians had unleashed a salvo of energy blasts from their ships, targeting Earth's defense stations. Buildings crumbled and cities burned. Earth's military was not prepared for this level of attack. "Move, move," Bonner shouted, dragging his soldiers to their feet. The Zorathians had shown their hand, and now the real fight had begun. For a moment, the team was stunned. The scale of the attack was unimaginable. But Bonner refused to let fear take hold. He looked around at his soldiers, their faces grim, their eyes full of fear, but also determination. They had no choice but to fight. The aliens might have their superior technology, but the humans had something else. They had the will to survive. And no matter how impossible it seemed, they would give their all to protect Earth. As the alien ships circled overhead, Commander Bonner knew one thing. This fight wasn't over yet. The Zorathians might think they had won, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The ground shook as the first wave of Zorathian firepower rained down from the skies. Earth's defenses, already crippled by the brutal assault, fought to hold their ground. The military, now stretched thin, had one last weapon to deploy: AI-driven robots, designed to fight the most advanced extraterrestrial forces. They were Earth's last hope. But in this moment, it became clear that humanity was vastly outmatched. As the robots powered up and mobilized, Bonner's team watched from their hidden positions. Their eyes were glued to the unfolding chaos as the Zorathian fleet released wave after wave of devastating weaponry. The robots, though advanced, stood no chance against the superior technology of the Zorathians. The alien starships unleashed their deadly lasers, and each strike shattered the Earth's robots like glass. Bonner clenched his fists in frustration, watching as their last line of defense crumbled. The Zorathians' AI-controlled warships easily adapted to every move the robots made, using their own superior predictive technology to anticipate and counter every strategy. No matter what the humans tried, the Zorathians were always one step ahead. In the sky above, the orbital bombardment intensified. Alien starships dropped explosive rockets, raining destruction on cities below. Buildings that once stood as symbols of humanity's strength were reduced to rubble in mere moments. Firestorms erupted from the impact zones, lighting up the horizon in a fiery glow. Earth's military stations were obliterated with ruthless precision, and the alien forces showed no mercy. Bonner's heart raced as he saw his home planet being torn apart. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was a small flicker of hope: the human will to survive. He knew the odds were against them, but he couldn't bring himself to give up. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. "Stay focused, everyone," Bonner shouted to his team, his voice strong despite the chaos around them. "We don't have much time. Our only chance is to strike fast and hit hard. We can't play by their rules. We'll make our own. The Zorathians were methodical, calculating every move. Their AI systems predicted the human strategies with eerie accuracy, and it was only a matter of time before they would crush Earth completely. But Bonner understood one thing: humans were unpredictable. They could outthink machines because they had something that no eye could replicate: instinct, creativity, and a refusal to surrender. "Bonner, we're outnumbered," Harris shouted as explosions echoed around them. "They've got us surrounded. We can't win this." But Bonner didn't flinch. "We don't need to win, Harris. We just need to make them bleed." As the team prepared to move out, a terrible silence fell over the battlefield. The alien ships hovered ominously overhead, and for a moment, it seemed as if the whole world was holding its breath. The robots, now nothing but piles of scrap metal, were abandoned. The Zorathians had wiped them out with terrifying efficiency. It seemed like there was no hope left. But Commander Bonner's voice cut through the silence, rallying his soldiers. "Get ready. We'll fight them on our terms, not theirs. We can't rely on technology. It's us. It's all about human will. They can predict every move, but they can't predict what's in our hearts." The humans had no cloaking devices left, no advanced weapons, and no reinforcements. But Bonner had a plan, one that relied on the one thing the Zorathians could never truly understand: the human will to survive at any cost. The team, battered but determined, moved into position. They split up, each soldier taking their own path, ready to execute the plan that Bonner had devised in a matter of seconds. It was risky, it was reckless, but it was the only chance they had. As they scattered, the Zorathians' eye immediately locked onto their movements, anticipating their every step. They had been caught in the open. But Bonner knew something the aliens didn't. Humans could improvise. When things went wrong, they could adapt in ways that no machine could predict. Bonner led the charge, breaking into a run toward the nearest alien warship, his pulse pounding in his ears. He knew that every step he took could be his last, but he didn't care. He had made a promise to fight for his planet, his team, and his people, and he would keep that promise, even if it meant sacrificing everything. But just as Bonner and his team closed in on the Zorathian forces, tragedy struck. Harris, one of Bonner's most trusted soldiers, was caught in the crossfire. A blast from one of the alien ships tore through the air, and Harris, who had been leading a diversion, was hit. The force of the explosion sent him flying, his body crumpling to the ground with a sickening thud. "No!" Bonner screamed, rushing toward his fallen comrade. But it was too late. Harris was gone. For a brief moment, Bonner's heart stopped. He had lost so many people in the past, but Harris had been different. They had fought side by side for years, laughed together, cried together. Now he was gone, and all that remained was the emptiness of loss. But something changed in that moment. Bonner's grief gave way to something else, a raw, unyielding anger. His eyes, once filled with fear, were now set in cold determination. Harris's sacrifice had lit a fire in him that no enemy could extinguish. "Do it for Harris," Bonner muttered to himself, his voice low and steady. "We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for every soldier we've lost, for every life that's been taken, and we'll make them pay." The remaining soldiers, their faces marked by grief and fury, gathered around Bonner. They knew they had no chance of winning this battle, but they had a chance to make their enemies feel the cost of underestimating humanity. The loss of Harris had given them something they hadn't had before, a reason to fight beyond survival. They would fight for each other, for the fallen, and for the future of humanity. With renewed determination, Bonner led his team toward the heart of the alien forces. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were humans, and no matter how many advanced ships the Zorathians had, they could never understand what it meant to truly fight for something. "Let's finish this," Bonner said, as they charged forward, leaving the shadows of fear and doubt behind them. The war was far from over, But in that moment, humanity had taken its first step toward showing the universe that it would never be an easy conquest. The Zorathians had underestimated them, and now they would learn the true meaning of humanity's strength. The Zorathians had underestimated humanity from the very start. They saw Earth's inhabitants as primitive, a race with inferior technology, and no real chance against the overwhelming force of their advanced AI-driven war machines. For the Zorathians, it was supposed to be an easy conquest. Earth was just another planet to be taken, and its people nothing more than obstacles to be crushed. But something unexpected began to happen. As the Zorathians unleashed their might on Earth, they encountered a force they had never accounted for: the human spirit. Commander Bonner, surrounded by his remaining soldiers, knew they were fighting not just for their survival, but for the very soul of humanity. He could feel the tension building in the air. Their enemy was strong, their technology nearly unbeatable, but Bonner refused to let them believe that humans would simply roll over and die. Earth had proven resilient in the face of countless challenges throughout history, and now was no different. Bonner gathered his team, their faces grim but determined. They had fought long and hard, but this was the final stand. The Zorathians were coming for the last remaining human strongholds, and the clock was ticking. Earth's fate was hanging in the balance. "They thought they could break us," Bonner said, his voice steady, but filled with an intensity that resonated with every soldier around him. "They thought we were weak, that we would surrender the moment the pressure got too high. But they don't know us. They don't know what we're capable of. And now, we show them." Bonner's words stirred something in his team. There was a shift in the air, a renewed fire in their eyes. The weight of their fallen comrades, the loss of so many soldiers, had only made them more determined to fight. It was no longer just about survival. It was about defying the odds. The Zorathians had assumed victory, but humanity had something they could never replicate: sheer willpower. With that resolve, Bonner and his team set their plan into motion. They knew the Zorathians had advanced AI systems capable of predicting every move they made. To counter this, Bonner's team had been working in secret, developing countermeasures to throw the alien intelligence off track. They deployed cloaking devices, vanishing from sight as they moved into the heart of enemy territory. The Zorathian eye would be unable to track them in real time, but they couldn't stay hidden forever. The human soldiers knew that this was a risk they had to take. "We've got one shot at this," Bonner said as they neared the enemy's central command hub. "If we can hack into their eye, we might have a chance to turn the tide. But we need to move fast." With the cloaking devices active, the soldiers crept closer to the Zorathian command center, navigating through the wreckage and devastation left in the wake of the alien fleet. Every step brought them closer to their goal, and deeper into the heart of enemy territory. The Zorathians had deployed their own soldiers, humanoid beings armed with energy weapons and shield generators. They moved in perfect sync, their military tactics sharp, and their response times flawless. But that was where humanity had an advantage. They might not have had the most advanced technology, but they had something the Zorathians could never predict: unpredictability. Bonner's soldiers fought with a ferocity that the Zorathians had never seen before. The human soldiers used their agility, their cunning, and their tactical knowledge to outmaneuver the alien soldiers at every turn. In one of the most intense close-quarters combat scenes, one of Bonner's soldiers, Harris, a young man who had lost his family in the initial assault, disarmed a Zorathian soldier, using his foe's own weapon against him. "This is how it's done," Harris yelled, adrenaline fueling his every movement. The Zorathians' cold, calculated attacks seemed like child's play in the face of human ingenuity and spirit. The Zorathians were fast learners, but humanity had learned faster. They adapted. They fought dirty. They fought for each other. And most importantly, they fought with everything they had. As Bonner's team made their way into the command center, the gravity of their mission began to sink in. The Zorathians had already taken Earth's orbit. Their fleet was descending from the skies, preparing for the final strike. The Zorathians' confidence had been shaken, but they still held the upper hand. At least, that's what they thought. Bonner's heart raced. The clock was ticking. "We need to finish this now," he said. "If we don't take control of their eye, we're done for. This is our only chance." The humans' plan was simple, but dangerous. They would breach the Zorathian command center, infiltrate the AI core, and use their hacking tools to flood the system with fake data. It wasn't just a gamble. It was a desperate measure. The enemy soldiers outside seemed to multiply as the team advanced, but Bonner and his men fought tooth and nail, pushing forward inch by inch. They made use of every strategy they had, setting traps, misdirecting the enemy, and using the environment to their advantage. The Zorathian eye was good, but it couldn't account for every possibility. As they reached the core, Bonner ordered the team to begin the hack. The hum of the cloaking devices and the faint click of weapons were the only sounds in the darkened command room. The Zorathian soldiers outside had no idea what was coming. "We're in," one of Bonner's soldiers said, her voice filled with hope as she cracked the final layer of security. But just as they began to hack into the Zorathian system, a massive explosion rocked the room. Bonner's heart skipped a beat as he saw the floor tremble beneath him. The Zorathians had anticipated the attack. They had been waiting for it. The humans had only seconds to react. They dove for cover as alien soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. The Zorathians had set a trap of their own. They weren't going to let Bonner's team take control of their systems so easily. Bonner had no choice but to move fast. His team fought with everything they had, but the Zorathians' superior firepower and numbers were starting to overwhelm them. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, the signal came through. "We've got it," shouted Harris, breathless but determined. "The AI is ours. The system is compromised." The Zorathians were in disarray. Their own eye, which had been so precise, had been fed false data that made them believe Earth's defenses were much stronger than they were. The Zorathians' fleet began to falter as their own systems struggled to process the false information. The humans, now with the advantage, surged forward. They fought with renewed strength, knowing that they had won the first battle in the war to save Earth. The Zorathians, disoriented and confused, were no longer the unstoppable force they once were. "That's it," Bonner said, his voice hoarse but filled with pride. "We've broken their system. We've shown them what humanity is made of." But even as victory seemed within reach, Bonner knew the real battle was just beginning. The Zorathians were down, but not out. They would regroup. They would adapt. But so would the humans. In the heart of the Zorathian command center, Bonner and his team had delivered the first blow in what would become a war for the future of Earth. The odds were still stacked against them, but humanity had proven one thing that day: never underestimate the power of the human spirit. The final battle had arrived, and Commander Bonner was ready to do whatever it took to save humanity. The Zorathian fleet had been crippled, but the war was far from over. The Zorathians had one final weapon that could potentially end the conflict once and for all: the AI-controlled Star Destroyer. This massive ship was unlike anything Bonner and his team had encountered before. Its weapons were capable of wiping out entire cities with a single strike, and its AI system was nearly impenetrable. But Commander Bonner knew that this was their only chance. It was a risky move. Destroying the Star Destroyer would require the team to infiltrate the heart of the Zorathian fleet, bypass their defenses, and strike at the core of the AI system controlling the massive warship. The plan was dangerous, and Bonner knew it. The Zorathian fleet still had plenty of firepower left, and there was no guarantee that his team would make it back alive. But Bonner had seen enough death and destruction to know that sometimes the only way to win was to put everything on the line. "We either end this now, or we all die trying," Bonner said, addressing his team. His voice was firm, but there was an underlying sadness to it. They had come so far, lost so many of their own, and yet here they were, standing on the brink of the ultimate sacrifice. His team, Though weary and battered from the constant fighting, nodded in agreement. They had been through too much to back down now. The human spirit, that indomitable will to survive and fight, was burning bright within them. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for each other. They were fighting for their families, for their homes, and for the future of humanity. The plan was simple but incredibly dangerous. Bonner and his team would infiltrate the Zorathian fleet's flagship and plant a series of explosives deep within the ship's core. The goal was to destroy the AI-controlled systems that powered the Star Destroyer, rendering it useless and breaking the Zorathians' hold on Earth. But the path to the flagship was riddled with obstacles. The Zorathian fleet still had formidable defenses in place, and the AI-controlled starships would be watching their every move. "Once we're in, we can't hesitate," Bonner said. "We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. This is our chance." With their plan in place, Bonner and his team prepared to board their stealth ships and infiltrate the enemy fleet. The journey ahead would be filled with danger, but they knew there was no turning back. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. As they flew toward the heart of the Zorathian fleet, the tension in the air was palpable. The stealth ships moved silently through space, cloaked from the Zorathian radar systems. But even with their cloaking technology, the team knew the odds were against them. The Zorathians had more advanced weapons, more ships, and better technology. Yet it was humanity's resourcefulness and refusal to give up that gave Bonner and his team the edge. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a massive explosion. The Zorathians had detected them. The alarm blared through their ships, and Bonner's heart raced. The final assault had begun. "Move out! Move out!" Bonner shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. His soldiers scrambled to deploy the explosive devices they had prepared, knowing that each step brought them closer to their goal, and closer to their death. The Zorathian defenses responded quickly, firing a barrage of energy blasts at the incoming ships. The explosions rocked the spacecraft, sending shockwaves through the crew. Bonner's team had barely made it past the initial wave of fire when they were met with fierce resistance from the Zorathian soldiers. The humanoid soldiers, their eyes glowing with the cold precision of artificial intelligence, fought without mercy. Bonner and his soldiers fought back with everything they had. They deployed smoke grenades to obscure the enemy's vision, then used hand-to-hand combat to take down the alien soldiers. Every move was calculated, every decision weighed with the understanding that one wrong step could mean the end for them all. Amid the chaos, Bonner saw one of his soldiers, Harris, take a hit. The blast sent him flying across the room, his body slamming against the hard metal walls. Bonner's heart sank as he rushed to his side, but it was too late. Harris was gone. The loss hit Bonner harder than anything else. Harris had been with him from the beginning, one of the soldiers who had stood by his side through every battle. Bonner felt a knot tighten in his chest as he closed his comrade's eyes. The weight of Harris's sacrifice, and the sacrifices of all those who had died fighting, bore down on him like a crushing wave. He could feel his resolve starting to crack, but he couldn't afford to lose his focus. Not now. "Keep moving," Bonner yelled, his voice filled with an intensity born of grief and determination. "For Harris, for all of them, we finish this." His team pressed on, their resolve strengthened by the loss of their comrade. They fought with a newfound fire, knowing that they couldn't let Harris's death be in vain. Every step they took, every enemy they fell, brought them closer to their goal. They had to succeed. There was no other choice. The final assault on the Star Destroyer's core was perilous. The deeper they went into the ship, the more they encountered the Zorathian defenses. The AI-controlled turrets fired relentlessly, and the walls seemed to close in around them. But Bonner and his team pushed forward, driven by a singular purpose: to destroy the heart of the Zorathian fleet and save humanity. They reached the core, and the countdown began. The explosives were set, and the core began to destabilize. But just as they were about to make their escape, an explosion rocked the ship, throwing Bonner across the room. He struggled to regain his footing, his vision blurry from the blast. The mission wasn't over yet. The Zorathian forces were closing in, and Bonner could feel the weight of failure on his shoulders. This was their last chance. If they didn't escape now, all would be lost. "Move," Bonner shouted, urging his team to run. His legs were heavy, his body battered from the explosion, but he pushed through the pain. They had to make it out. As they ran through the corridors, Bonner glanced back one last time. The core was about to explode, and the ship was shaking violently. The countdown continued, and Bonner's heart raced. This was it. They were so close, but there was no guarantee they would make it out alive. The final moments were a blur. The explosion rocked the Star Destroyer, sending shockwaves through the ship. Bonner and his team barely made it to their ship in time, their hearts pounding in their chests as they escaped the inferno they had just unleashed. As they looked back at the Zorathian fleet, the destruction was clear. The Star Destroyer was gone, and with it, the Zorathians' hold on Earth. The victory was bittersweet. They had lost so much along the way, but they had won. Humanity had fought back, and against all odds, they had triumphed. Bonner looked at his team, his heart filled with pride and sorrow. "We did it," he whispered, knowing that the road ahead would be hard. But for the first time in a long while, humanity had hope. The battle wasn't over, but this victory was a turning point. And with that, Commander Bonner knew that Earth's future was no longer in the hands of the Zorathians. It was in the hands of the humans who had survived. The final battle had arrived, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. Commander Bonner and his team stood ready to face the full might of the Zorathian eye-controlled fleet. The skies above Earth were filled with the ominous glow of alien warships, each one a symbol of the Zorathian Empire's unyielding power. They had already suffered heavy losses, but the Zorathians had one final weapon, a weapon that could wipe Earth from existence in the blink of an eye: the quantum beam. This terrifying weapon, designed to channel the power of a dying star, had the ability to destroy entire planets. It was the ultimate show of power, and the Zorathians had saved it for the final confrontation. The beam, once fired, would annihilate Earth in a matter of seconds. The pressure was unbearable, but Commander Bonner knew they had one last chance to stop it. There was no retreat, no backup, only the remaining strength of humanity's will to fight. Bonner and his team, weary from countless battles, faced their biggest challenge yet. With each passing minute, the Zorathian AI system grew more alert, more capable of predicting their every move. Yet Bonner knew that they had something the Zorathians could never account for: the human spirit. The battle raged on. Alien ships swarmed the skies, their weapons unleashing torrents of energy at Bonner's team. The Zorathians had perfected their eye-controlled warships, and their fleet was nearly unstoppable. But Bonner's soldiers were no ordinary fighters. They had faced insurmountable odds before, and each time, they had found a way to survive. Now, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, they were ready to fight like never before. "Stay focused," Bonner shouted, his voice carrying over the chaos. "We have one shot at this. We're going to take down that quantum beam and shut down their AI system. This is it. Give everything you've got." The team moved swiftly, utilizing their advanced tech to stay ahead of the Zorathian countermeasures. The stealth suits they wore allowed them to remain invisible to the Zorathian sensors, and their energy weapons sliced through alien forces with precision. But they couldn't afford to waste any time. The closer they got to the quantum beam's firing chamber, the more resistance they faced. The Zorathians, though formidable in their strength, were not prepared for the unpredictability of human ingenuity. While their AI could anticipate almost every move, it couldn't anticipate the sheer willpower of the human spirit. The team fought with a ferocity that no machine could calculate. They knew they were outmatched in terms of technology, but they didn't need advanced systems or weapons to win. They just needed to outsmart the Zorathians, and they had done it before. As they reached the quantum beam control room, the air crackled with energy. The massive weapon was powered up and ready to fire. Bonner could feel the heat from the device as it hummed with power, and he knew that time was running out. The Zorethian eye had already begun its countdown to destruction. They had only moments before Earth would be wiped out of existence. "On my mark," Bonner said, his voice cold and determined. "We disable their systems, and we take down that beam." His soldiers moved into position, each one carrying out their part of the plan. One soldier, Sanchez, began hacking into the Zorethian AI systems, sending shockwaves through the neural network that controlled the fleet. Another soldier, Rodriguez, worked on planting explosives to disable the quantum beam itself. Bonner and the rest of the team held off the Zorethian soldiers, their weapons blazing as they fended off wave after wave of enemy forces. The Zorethian eye was not going to let them succeed without a fight. It launched a series of counterattacks, its weapons firing relentlessly at Bonner and his team. The energy blasts came from all directions, forcing the soldiers to dive for cover. The sound of explosions and gunfire filled the air, mixing with the roar of the Zorethian ships above. The situation was dire, but Bonner's team held strong. They had come too far to let this battle slip away. Despite the overwhelming odds, Bonner's team managed to infiltrate the AI systems and plant the virus that would cripple the Zorethian network. The virus spread quickly, infiltrating every corner of the Zorethian fleet, slowly but surely rendering their systems useless. The once mighty AI, which had been their greatest strength, was now their greatest weakness. With each passing moment, the Zorethian fleet became more and more disorganized. Their attacks became erratic, and their precision diminished. But just as the team thought they had won, the quantum beam powered up once more. The Zorethian eye had one last trick up its sleeve. The countdown was already at its final seconds, and the beam was primed to fire. Bonner could feel the weight of the moment. It was now or never. "We need to shut it down now," Bonner yelled, racing toward the control panel. The Zorethian soldiers tried to stop him, but his team fought them off with everything they had. In that final, desperate moment, Bonner's hand hovered over the control switch. The countdown was almost over. With a deep breath, Bonner slammed his hand down on the switch, sending a surge of energy through the system. The quantum beam sputtered and faltered, then shut down completely. The Zorethian fleet, deprived of their ultimate weapon, began to fall apart. The explosion that followed was nothing short of breathtaking. The Zorethian warships, now stripped of their advanced technology, started to collapse. Bonner and his team, barely managing to escape the blast radius, watched as the once unstoppable fleet disintegrated before their eyes. The victory was hard-earned, but it was a victory nonetheless. Earth had been saved. The Zorethians, once so sure of their superiority, had been defeated by the strength of human spirit. They had underestimated humanity, thinking that their advanced technology would be enough to crush them. But in the end, it wasn't technology that won the battle. It was the resilience, the determination, and the willpower of the human heart. As the team gathered, battered but victorious, Bonner couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. They had done it. They had won, against all odds. But as he looked around at his surviving soldiers, he couldn't forget the sacrifices that had been made to get here. The faces of those who had fallen flashed in his mind. And for a moment, the victory felt bittersweet. "We did it," Bonner said quietly, his voice breaking. "But we've lost so much along the way." His soldiers stood tall, despite the pain of their losses. They had fought for each other, for their families, and for Earth. And in the end, they had triumphed. As the remaining Zorethian forces retreated into the depths of space, Earth had been saved. But Bonner knew that this victory came at a great cost. The war was over, but the scars of battle would remain. And while humanity had shown the galaxy the power of their spirit, they knew this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, and there would always be new challenges ahead. But for now, they had won. And that was enough. The battle was over. The echoes of war had faded, and Earth stood victorious. The once fearsome Zorathian fleet, which had been poised to obliterate the planet, now turned tail and retreated into the vast reaches of space. The victory was not just a triumph of military power, but a testament to humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and undying will to survive. The Zorathians, who had once viewed humans as nothing more than primitive beings, now realized the error of their ways. They had underestimated Earth and its people, and the cost of that mistake was far greater than they could have ever imagined. Commander Bonner stood on the ground, looking up at the sky. The battle had been brutal, and the toll of war was written on the faces of his soldiers. But despite the losses, despite the countless sacrifices, Earth had prevailed. The Zorathians were no longer a threat, and the peace they had fought so hard for was now within reach. As the Zorathian fleet withdrew, Bonner couldn't help but feel a deep sense of relief. The alien invaders, so confident in their technological superiority, had been brought to their knees by the very thing they had underestimated: the spirit of humanity. Earth had faced an enemy far stronger, far more advanced, and yet it was humanity's determination that had won the day. In the face of overwhelming odds, they had fought with everything they had. And it had been enough. The victory was not just military, but symbolic. The Zorathians, who had once considered themselves the apex of civilization, now saw humans for what they truly were, not just survivors, but warriors. And it was that warrior spirit that had turned the tide in Earth's favor. The message was clear. Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored or underestimated. Humanity had proven its strength, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson it had learned. As the Zorathian fleet disappeared into the distance, the people of Earth celebrated. The skies, once darkened by the shadow of alien warships, were now clear. Human ships flew freely, soaring through the air as a symbol of their newfound freedom. Earth had survived, and humanity had not just endured, but had come out on top. Bonner, now a hero in the eyes of his people, stood alongside his team. They had been through so much together, each one of them tested beyond measure. And yet, they had prevailed. It was a victory hard-earned, but it was a victory that would resonate throughout history. The world had changed, and so had humanity. No longer would Earth be looked down upon as a mere blip in the galaxy. Now the people of Earth stood tall, knowing that they had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the celebrations continued, Bonner took a moment to reflect. He thought of the soldiers who had fallen, the lives lost in the battle. Their sacrifice had made this victory possible, and their memories would live on in the hearts of those who had fought beside them. But there was no time for mourning now. Earth had a future to rebuild, a future that was theirs to shape. In the midst of the celebrations, Bonner addressed the crowd, his voice carrying across the gathered masses. "We are not just survivors," he said, his words strong and resolute. "We are warriors, and we are not afraid." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices a powerful affirmation of everything they had fought for. It was a declaration that humanity was no longer weak, no longer a prey to the more powerful civilizations of the universe. They had fought back, and they had won. The camera panned to the sky, where human ships soared above the Earth, their wings cutting through the clouds in celebration. The once threatened planet now stood as a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope for any who would dare to challenge humanity. The Zorathians may have underestimated Earth, but they had learned that humanity was not to be trifled with. And as the last of the Zorathian warships disappeared into the depths of space, Bonner allowed himself a moment of peace. Earth had been saved, but more than that, humanity had been reborn. They were no longer just survivors of a broken world. They were warriors, ready to face the challenges of the future with unwavering strength. As the sun began to set over the Earth, Bonner watched as the stars twinkled in the distance. The universe was vast, and while humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, there were many unknowns ahead. But Bonner knew one thing for certain. Earth was no longer the underdog. They had earned their place among the stars. The victory was theirs. But the war was only just beginning. The galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of, and it would never forget the warriors who had fought to protect their home. With each passing day, Earth would grow stronger, more united, and more prepared for whatever the future held. And so, as Bonner and his team watched the skies above Earth, they knew that this was just the beginning of a new era for humanity. They had faced the impossible and triumphed, and now they stood at the dawn of a new age. The challenges of the future were unknown, but one thing was clear: humanity was ready to face them. The warriors of Earth had spoken, and their message was clear: they would never back down. The story of humanity's victory against the Zorathians would be told for generations to come, a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of a people who had been pushed to the brink, but had refused to fall. The future was theirs, and they would fight for it with everything they had. The age of humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.